Welcome to muscle balancing. Today we're going to talk about what is muscle balancing, why is it important, and how to develop your eye to detect muscle imbalances. Alright, so what is muscle balancing? It is balancing opposing muscle groups so that they are not pulling on joints unevenly and causing problems. I'm going to give you some examples of this. So, for example, in the knee joint, just to simplify things, this is oversimplifying, but it's going to help you understand the concept. You have the hamstrings, which are going to flex the knee, and the quads, which are going to extend the knee. And the quads and the hamstrings work in opposition to each other to create smooth motions. So anytime you're doing either one of those motions, flexion or extension of the knee, those muscle groups are going to be working so that it doesn't jolt the knee or move too fast or too slow, and you've got that control and the fluidity that we oftentimes take for granted as we watch and create movement. However, if those muscles get out of balance, as we're going to call it, and one of them becomes too strong or too tight, or maybe one becomes too weak or too loose, then it's going to start to affect the tracking of that joint. And it's going to start to pull the bones in ways that it's not intended to be pulled. And so that there's going to be excessive wear and tear possibly on the joint. It could cause some inflammation in the joint, possibly a traumatic injury, but either which way, it's not ideal setup for that joint. And maybe something doesn't happen today, but it might happen and potentially will happen in the future if this imbalance is not addressed. Okay, so bottom line, you want to look for these muscle imbalances, and we're going to talk about that later, and you want to lengthen what is tight or strong. Okay, so you don't necessarily know whether a muscle is tight or it's really strong or it's both on first glance, but either way you want to lengthen those things that are short. We want to do the opposite also, so we want to strengthen what is too long or too weak. So again, you don't necessarily know which one it is, but without really testing it, but we're going to strengthen those muscles up. Okay, and when you do that, you're going to bring that balance to those muscles, those opposing muscles, so that they can let and allow the joint to track properly and have as little tension on the joint as possible. So things will move effortlessly, you'll have much more control, things actually feel better in the joints and such because there's not all that tension from the inappropriate pulling going on. Now, what I'm not talking about is muscle symmetry or body symmetry. So this is where, your right side might be stronger than your left side. That is not what we're talking about. That's really important to develop symmetry in the body and make sure that the right side and the left side are symmetrical in terms of development and flexibility and all, but that's not what we're talking about. We're looking at individual joints and the muscles that control those joints. So this is quite a bit different. We also are not talking about balancing like standing on one leg. Again, that's a super important thing as well. We want to have balance and not be toppled over at the least little wind that might pass by, but that is not what we're talking about in this particular lecture, and that's not what muscle balancing is talking about. Okay, that's both of those other things, the body symmetry and the regular balance work, are also benefits of Pilates, but it's not called muscle balancing. And those are sometimes confused, so I just want to really emphasize that and clarify that so that that's clear in your brain before we get started. Alright, so why is muscle balancing important? Muscle balancing is so important, and this is one of the things in my mind that really sets Pilates apart philosophically from gym work, from traditional fitness, from other modalities, because it is so different in how it views things. And oftentimes, we as Pilates instructors, we look at the muscle imbalances, but we don't necessarily call it this and articulate this quite as distinctly. So I really want to shed light on this and identify what we're doing when we're working on somebody in their Pilates lesson. So first off, identifying and working on muscle balancing will tell us where people's potential future injuries are before they happen. So it makes you a mind reader. And this works because anytime that there's tension on the joint, again, like I said, it's going to produce extra friction and cause problems at the joint. So eventually down the road, if you give it enough time, it will have an injury or pain going on there. if it's not addressed and corrected. Working on the muscle imbalances is also going to help explain injuries that are already current in the body. So if somebody has got an injury that's been over time, so I'm not talking about like traumatic injuries, they were hit by a car kind of injuries, but I'm talking about injuries that like a bursitis or arthritis or things, it's going to help you understand how that came to be. And most likely, this may or may not, but probably not, has been addressed already. So as a Pilates instructor, knowing what their injuries are, you want to look for these imbalances and make sure that they are worked on to alleviate as much pain in the current injuries as possible. And when you do this, it will magically fix things, which again, we're not going to tell our clients that we're going to cure things or fix things, but things just clear up in Pilates. And you guys have all seen or heard about this where I used to have this pain and now it's just disappeared. This is why. It's because of muscle balancing. So we're not fixing the joints or anything. We're not manipulating things. We're not doing surgery on them or anything. But when you get the muscles balanced that surround that joint, the joint is going to work properly and it's going to feel better. It's also going to tell us what we need to work on. So when we're teaching, if you understand the client's muscle imbalances, it's going to allow you to lesson plan appropriately. And I have a whole lecture on how to do this and go into great depth onto strategies for this in our advanced training. So stay tuned for that. But it's going to also just help you put your focus on your cues and what you really need to watch for with that particular client, knowing what their imbalances are. This makes a huge difference to instructors in how much their client progresses, how quickly they progress, and how much they start to get that mind-body connection and understanding their body and just feeling hopeful that their body can change. Okay, so how is this different than regular fitness? We get asked this a lot. So I've got 4 basic reasons. First off, most people think that their body or their posture is, that's just how it is. This is who I am, this is how my posture is, and I can't change it. And that is only going to compound the problem, having that bad attitude, because our bodies are amazingly dynamic and most conditions can be neutralized or reversed through understanding and proper work of them. So we want to really work on this, changing this mindset of people. And you know what, even if it's not going to change, having a bad attitude that they give up is definitely not going to be helpful, if nothing else, mentally for them in their lifetime. So the bones are actually shaped as a matter of function. They're not just randomly formed. So all those knobby, things on the bones, those are all there because there's a muscle that attaches to those knobs and rough spots. And the stronger that muscle is, the more it pulls on the bone. And that pull is causing the bone to change its shape to be knobbier if the muscle's strong, or not as knobby if the muscle's really atrophied and weak. So again, just an example of that dynamicness of the body in how it changes based on what we do. The field of epigenetics has gone a long way in showing and clearly demonstrating that our genes are not our destiny. I think most people and most clients have heard a lot about genetics and that this is what my genes are. They look at it as a life sentence. I can't change that. Well, recent research has shown that epigenetics are how our genes are manifested are completely influenced by our nutrition, our exercise, and our lifestyle choices. And these are far more powerful than our genes. So you want to empower clients with this knowledge and again, focus on that positive, dynamic outlook of the body and just keeping your mind open to what is possible and not just giving up that hopeless mindset. Second reason that this is different than regular fitness. Most people are focusing on sculpting for aesthetics, what I call aesthetic training. Pilates is not about aesthetics. Focus on aesthetics is going to focus on surface muscles, so the ones that are right under the skin that show up more. Okay, so you might have the clients that, oh, look at the back of my arm, I want that one that sticks out and makes that little diagonal mark and that cut here, that cut there. This is not what Pilates is about, okay? Sculpting those surface muscles may be all nice and well and good, and it creates a certain look, but that is not going to help your body function in any way, shape, or form necessarily. So we want to get away from that mindset of what you see and focus on what is the purpose of working out. Our purpose of working out is to create function in our body so that our body moves with ease and has great mechanics. Okay, so again, the focus on aesthetics is going to look for a certain shape. I want to be skinnier. I want my tummy flatter. I want, my shoulders to look like this or that. And again, this is not the point of working out. Most people have this mindset that working out is to create a certain shape of their body, to get a certain look. And there's sexual or social benefits to looking or a certain way. And that is not what Pilates is about. Pilates is about feeling good in your body and enjoying movement. And at Personalized Pilates, we believe that everyone deserves to enjoy movement. So it's very, very important that we change this shape, this mindset rather. And I like to say that clients come in because they want aesthetic benefits, and they stay because their body feels good. So we want to focus on function. Aesthetic training is not focused on function at all, and because of that, they're not going to work whole groups of muscles. There's whole muscle groups that personal trainers are never even taught the names of, and they don't necessarily understand how they work or what they do. And most clients are the same way. They've never heard of your serratus anterior or your psoas or something like that, which are incredibly important muscles, but because they're not on the surface, you can't see them, so they don't care. Also, people don't care about the muscles in your forearm or your neck, even though those have incredible implications for, joint health and pain. People have this weird thing that in your feet, your hands, and your neck, it's like there's not muscles there because the shape doesn't change that much, so they don't really care about them. This is what we're trying to get away from in Pilates. There's just this huge, huge disconnect between how they work their body and how they feel. And they don't seem to see that those things are related. Okay, so if you don't work out and you slump over all the time, your body's not going to feel good and you're going to develop muscle imbalances. And clients need to be walked through this process and this bizarre mindset that they've been conditioned to try to change this worldview. Clients also need to understand that they're connected and that they have responsibility for how they feel. And this should be an incredibly empowering knowledge. So when they know that they have the ability to change how their body moves, how it feels, and what it looks like as a byproduct, they should get very excited and feel very empowered. So this is a good thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing. I talk all the time about how when you focus on the aesthetics, yes, you might look better, but you're not necessarily going to feel better. When you focus on the form and the function, like we do in Pilates, you're going to feel better, and looking better just kind of comes along with it as a side benefit. So clients will get excited about that, and there's nothing wrong with getting excited about that, but it's not the focus, it's not the driving purpose of why they're working out and how they're choosing to work out. All right, so number 3, most people are focused on feeling the burn. So what is the burn? The burn is what happens to the muscle when it starts to go to exhaustion. So it's a signal from your muscles telling your brain, by the way, I'm tired and I am done, and there's a buildup of lactic acid, and I'm going to freak out and just drop and let go in a second. So stop doing this. Okay? And your body is giving that message for a reason. Okay? It needs to stop. And in Pilates, we do get some burn, but it's not necessarily our focus. It's not our intent. And the burn that most people want is not going to be felt on every exercise, because a lot of muscles, the deeper the muscle, the less superficial it is, the less right underneath the skin it is, the more important the muscle is, and the less likely it is to burn. Okay, so for example, your heart. Think of your heart. Your heart is a muscle. Most people understand that. Or your tongue. Your tongue is a muscle. You've got tons of muscles throughout your body that don't get tired. Okay, they're endurance muscles. They're going to go forever. If your heart stopped, you'd be dead. Your skeletal muscles aren't quite the same, but there are a lot of muscles in there that are not going to get exhausted. They don't have to burn just because they're working. So in Pilates, while your clients can enjoy the burn, it's not the point of it. Okay, so there's whole muscle groups that will never burn because they're very important and they still need to be worked. So you want to educate your client on that. Now, along with that, you have the soreness factor. I just want to mention here, as kind of a little side note, the soreness is a matter of a sliding scale for injury. So the muscle fibers, the way they slide back and forth, they have to rip a little bit in order to build more mass. Okay, and that's a good thing. You're building your muscle up. If you rip more, they will start to go towards the injury phase. Now, for bodybuilders that want to build pure bulk, this is what they're looking for, and so they rip themselves on purpose. This is what they talk about, getting ripped and such. This is actually the first phase towards injury. If they continue to do that, it's the same thing as a hamstring pull or something that we talk about in a bad context. So this is a sliding scale, and we don't want to go into that injury phase. You can build amazing amounts of strength in a healthier way where you don't feel that ripping, I can't walk kind of feeling afterwards. Now, a lot of clients will equate that with getting a good workout, so you're working against the grain on this, but you want to educate them that, you know, they don't have to feel it the next day for it to be a great workout. They want to feel the work at the time, but not necessarily the next day, unless it's something they're doing a little different angle or they're fighting a muscle they're not used to working, and then in case they might feel it a little bit. But you definitely don't want it where you can't walk or you can't stand up from using the toilet, 3 days later. That is injury phase. That's not what we're looking for. Okay, so also with the feeling the burn stuff, people a lot of times are looking to burn how many calories, burn X amount of calories. They have all these charts. If you do this activity for this long, you burn this many calories. Well, I just have to say that those are very generic charts, that everybody's metabolism is individual, and it's not quite as simple as calories in equals calories out. So, not all calories are created equal, and our body uses calories in very different ways. So try to get your clients away from the numbers and the calories and the pounds, because that is not, the number orientation is not what's going to help them in terms of joint health. And if they get focused on doing X amount of calories, they're going to a lot of times tend to focus on the wrong things and do things with poor form that necessarily might lead to more injuries. Anytime you're doing something for a long period of time, like your cardio exercise or something, you're going to eventually wear muscles out and they're going to get tired and you're going to slump into bad posture and stuff. It'd be much more efficient to do a couple good ones than a lot of bad ones, especially when we talk about muscle balancing. And then the last reason that this is different than regular fitness is that most people are just too lazy. They do not want to do the work to really tap and turn their mind on to connect to their body and focus on feeling the right things into their body. It's too much work. They'd rather just slap through a couple sets or get on the cardio thing and watch some TV, and it's a lot easier that way. We're not looking for easy, we're looking for effective. Okay, so that's one of the main reasons that Pilates is very different. A lot of times people would much rather take a pill or even have surgery than have to do the work to actually attain health. And in our American society, this is growing more and more prevalent. I have seen so many clients that have, a muscle imbalance. I've shown them how to do the work for it, and they just go out and have surgery because they think it's easier. Well, the rehab for the surgery is much harder than just doing the Pilates exercise in the first place. Plus, you don't have all the chemicals and the trauma and everything. I don't understand it, but we have this very odd mindset, so know that you're working against that. Also, people are very attached to their vices, their little comforts, and they do not want to give up, what makes them feel good, even if it means attaining what they truly, deeply want in their heart of hearts, health, pain, no pain, strength, etc. They're not willing to give it up a lot of times. So, for example, you might have a woman that has incredible foot pain, but they're not willing to not wear high heels. Or they want to wear this certain dress, and even though it makes their back hurt or whatever, it's very interesting to look inside people's brains as to why they're choosing things, and just know that it's not all about the same choices that you would make. A lot of times people have certain things that are more important to them they're not willing to change. So my mantra is, okay, if you're going to wear those high heels, that's fine, but you have to do the work to take care of your body because of it. You want to have lots of babies? Great! You have to do the work between each baby to get your body back in shape, to take care of your body. there's always a price for it, and that's fine. You just have to know what that price is and then pay it. All right, so here comes the nitty-gritty. When the rubber meets the road, how do you find these muscle imbalances? This is the million-dollar question, right? Okay, so this sounds really way oversimplified, but bottom line, what you're doing is you want to have a crystal clear picture of what perfection is. What does ideal alignment and posture and, performance of this particular exercise look like? Then, when you watch the person in front of you, make sure when you're cueing that they understand what ideal is. Don't make them feel bad because they're not ideal, but make sure they understand that and they're working towards it. And then look at the things that they cannot do. What they suck at is what they need to work at. And it's just that simple. I hate to, make it seem like it's, too easy, but it really is. So here's what you do. Look for what they suck at. Those are the things that you want to then identify. So cue to ideal and look what things are not going there. Okay, so are there restrictions? Are there limitations? I must say, be very careful that before you assume that there's a muscle imbalance, that you make sure that client in their head has a clear understanding of what they're trying to do. Because if it's not clear in their head, it's not going to be clear in their body, and they might just be saying the wrong message to their body, and yes, they're capable of it, they just didn't know you wanted it. Does that make sense? Okay, so look for where things are not moving that are supposed to be moving. So there might be something that's too tight and or too strong there. Also, look for things that go too far or too fast. So those are things, muscles, that might be too weak or too loose. All right, so look for the things too tight, too strong, or too weak or loose. And then try to articulate them. So again, going back to the Singing Bones lecture, you want to look for the joints, and you don't even have to know every single muscle. You're looking for which movements of the joints are restricted, which ones are moving too much. And if you want to translate that to muscles, if you really understand the anatomy, awesome. But you might just talk about groups of muscles. So you might say hip extensors are weak, hip flexors are tight. It's a really common imbalance for a lot of people. You might, say shoulder flexors are tight, shoulder extensors are weak. So you don't have to get nitty-gritty to the actual muscles names and which ones. You can talk about the joint movements as well. And you want to actually articulate them. Okay, now this can be very overwhelming because most of us have a lot of stuff going on. So what I say is pick the top 3. Okay, 3. 3 is a good number to work with because it's not so many that you're overwhelmed, and it's more than one thing that you just feel is hammered on all the time. Different exercises are going to emphasize different imbalances. So pick 3 and work on those. And as the client gets better at some of these, those imbalances diminish. They get more balanced, if you will. There's going to be other ones that were maybe more minor that are going to become more major. Now I want to highlight this and give you a special note because as you go through teacher training, you're going to be doing a lot of work on yourself. And commonly what happens is people go through training, they're like, I'm getting worse. I have more issues and more things going on. No. You are just refining and getting rid of some of those really big problems, and you're noticing the more minor ones now because you can handle dealing with some of those lower priority ones. So it's not that you're getting worse, you're just understanding more and able to deal with more things at a time because some of the bigger ones are not so big anymore. Okay, so as a little side note, your clients might feel that process too, which is why I want to mention it. Oftentimes, general Pilates, meaning no emphasis on any particular area, will address these muscle imbalances because of the innate way that Joe created the exercises and how he created them. However, if you know these muscle imbalances, like I mentioned, you can lesson plan for this, which we'll talk about in a little more advanced training, or you can focus your cues on them, which is extremely effective to draw clients' attention to this. It might be as simple as, okay, say their hamstrings are really weak and they're doing a bridging exercise. You say, okay, I think you can go a little farther. Ideally, we're looking to work the back of your leg even more and lift your pubic bone higher to the sky. So the higher you get it, the more it's going to help relieve that back pain or hip pain or whatever they're having. So tying those together and giving them the responsibility how to work on that is super important. Okay, so look for what the clients suck at and focus on those things. Those are going to give you a big insight as to what their imbalances are. Pick the top 3 and identify them by the motion at the joints. Okay, that's how you want to identify them. Now, to practice this, your application assignment for this week is to list your own muscle imbalances. You've got to be able to identify what's going on with you before you can identify with anyone else, because you know everything about your body, more than anyone else could possibly know. So you want to go through some self-practice hours, think about which exercises you're not good at, what part of those exercises are you not good at, and really pick your top 3. You can go OCD and list 8 of them if you want, but I want you to prioritize which 3 are the top 3. And put the others in parentheses and save them for later, because I know all of us Pilates instructors get a little crazy and want to do every imbalance we got. So, focus and prioritize. And then next time you do a self-practice hour, think about those as you're going through and feel how you can really focus and emphasize that, just being able to identify them. It's incredibly powerful where you put your focus and just revealing, they say in AA, actually admitting there's a problem is the first step. This is what we're doing. We're identifying the problem, and just knowing that is going to help you with your cues of the client or your working out of yourself. So go ahead, application assignment, write down your top 3 muscle imbalances. So talk about it with the joint.